Alright, so we're down to 4 in the football championship, lads. 2 more provincial champions crowned at the weekend. Fantastic celebrations in Tyrone after reclaiming it. 11 in a row for Dublin. I'd say you didn't even drink a beer, Alan, but we'll get to that in part 2. Ulster champions, Colm. I suppose, like, new management coming in, it's like a fantastic year. There's no doubt about that. Like, and the way they did it. You know, missing so many players. We saw the Dublin hurlers recently miss some players by COVID, lost the Leinster final. You know, a lot of people had a lot of sympathy on them because, you know, it was very hard to deal with that shock at the end. Tyrone missed Tiernan McCann, Richie Donnelly, Frank Burns, Rory Brennan and their manager, and still managed to win the Ulster Championship.
Yeah, first and foremost, that there's an awful lot of, like, I don't think that's going to be the end of it, just with the COVID side of things, and it's just unfortunate them lads had to sit out at the weekend, and you know that's just the times we're in. But look, take nothing away from Tyrone. It was a fantastic game of football. I thought it probably had a little bit of madness in it as well. But look, they probably showed where they're. You know, I've been fairly confident over the last number of years. There's been a good panel and a good bench, and people nowadays, to win anything, you need that strength and depth. And by and large, you know, they're missing a lot of mainstays there in that team at the weekend. But you know, the guys that came in, I was fairly confident even before the game that they would step up and do the business. And yeah, I didn't want it as close as that or as nerve wracking. But at the same time, you know, getting over the line in the final is all that matters. Really.
Do you know when they found out about these COVID issues? Or do you know, like I saw Brian Dewar said after the game, with communication the way it is nowadays, there's no barriers. So he definitely had a big input before and during the game. Like, I'm just thinking of a player's routine here, Colm. Like, your manager now is on a Skype call in the dressing room. You're thrown out of your comfort, you know, you're thrown out of your normal routine.
You're in uncharted territory for sure. I don't know like how early in the week that they knew, or you know, there was rumours going around that there was potential COVID issues, and obviously having a bit of an inside line there. You know, the guys were trying to stay well clear of training. I actually don't even know if they trained there last week. There was people talking that they never trained all week. That's yet to be confirmed or denied, but they were on complete lockdown the week prior to the game. So there was something that, you know, must have been going on in the background on that. So I'm not sure how that would massively impact your preparations if that was the case, if they weren't training on that, and especially not having Fergal there as well. You're really in a weird place at that point. But and it would disrupt definitely the week of a game. You don't do an awful lot of training, and it's fairly sharp, focusing in on the tactical stuff. And if that is the case, you know, and they've still got over the line, it's a fairly good bit of business by Tyrone.
Yeah, it definitely is, Alan, isn't it? Like, I mean,
yeah,
Jesus.
It is, but I think you'd find, like, over the last kind of year or whatever, guys have probably become used to doing team meetings and stuff over Zoom calls. And I know, like, any management team kind of worth the salt now is preparing for all sorts of eventualities. So I remember with Jim Gavin, we used to go through a list of what ifs the week before a game. What if the bus breaks down? What if something happens? What if this happens? So
really, give us a few more of them there. Give us a few more what ifs.
What if we concede a goal in the first minute?
Right.
That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe we start with someone gets sent off. Yeah. So I'm sure with COVID, those sort of scenarios had been spoke about during the year. What if players get COVID?
How many what ifs was there?
There was about 10 on the list
really?
At one stage. There was, yeah.
There's no stone unturned.
I was about to say we didn't have that. We didn't have that at all.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea.
Yeah, it is a good idea.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, I suppose like if something happens that's significant for the team, like this, a manager going missing, or a number of players getting sick or whatever, or catching COVID. So I'm sure it would have been discussed and how, and it just might have brought a little bit of clarity in a week that if you hadn't have gone through that beforehand, it would have caused a bit of confusion. Is he out? Is he in? This sort of stuff. So,
yeah.
Like ultimately the players that were available had to focus on the job in hand, and yeah, like I think like there's probably been a few questions asked at Tyrone this year so far, and it's obviously taken Brian Dewar and Fergal Lowe a bit of time to put their own stamp on things and to start to implement kind of the way they want to play football. But you can definitely see it starting to come to fruition. You can see confidence in a lot of the guys, like even McCurry. Yes, he's probably a little bit quieter than he was the last day, but he looks like he's still losing so much confidence. Matty Donnelly probably had his best game this year, like the dummy solo he threw. Like as a forward, what a dummy solo like that, when you sell a fella like that, does for somebody's confidence. I remember throwing to myself, and if you catch someone like that, it just does wonders for your confidence. So he's gone into an All-Ireland semi-final now full of confidence, and
you did it to Mark Riley on your debut, didn't you?
I did actually. I used to throw a few of them. I think lads copped onto it towards the end of my career. I used to love a dummy solo, but what it does for forwards' confidence is huge. You know yourself.
I prefer a dummy solo than a point.
Yeah, when you pull it off, it's beautiful, especially when the fella goes sprawling across your looking for the block. But no, they look in really good shape, Tyrone, and if you bring those 3 or 4 guys kind of back into the team, they're certainly in a good position going into a semi-final, and they're going to be underdogs against Kerry, so they've nothing to lose at this stage, in fairness to Brian Dewar and Fergal Logan, to win an Ulster Championship in their first year in what looked like a really difficult, and what was a really difficult Ulster Championship, is a big plus for them.
Yeah, a quite difficult draw for them as well. The defending Ulster champions Cavan, Donegal, and then Monaghan to win it. So, we'll talk about that game in a minute, but we have to discuss this goalkeeper thing at the weekend that we saw. So we saw Niall Morgan marking space on maybe the 45 for a lot of the game, maybe up towards midfield, making sure that Beggan doesn't have a big area to kick into, acting maybe as a deterrent to Beggan. And then we saw Beggan kind of doing the same thing in the second half. Colm, something similar. He almost got cut out just from one long kick out. He's caught in no man's land, and it took, a brilliant tackle from him, and flicked it up to himself. It was outrageous what he did, but at the end of the day, should he really be doing that, Colm? What do you make of this new phenomenon? Can you see this taking hold, or is this just one goalie copying the other on a weird day?
I know if Niall especially plays outfield for his club, and a very, very good outfield club player. I've marked him a few times myself, and he's given me my fill of it. So I think with Tyrone, I suppose, so we're looking at Tyrone first, what they're trying to do, and Niall has been encouraged probably the last number of years from both Mickey and now obviously from Brian and Fergal to come out and nearly act as a sweeper or whatnot. He's obviously taking it to another level now, going out and pushing right out for kickouts and that. It's risky. It's risky. We've seen what Beggan obviously nearly getting caught, and probably Matty should have shipped it on and would have been a scorer at the back of it. And I think it's going to take something like that. If that happens, then they might reverse a wee bit. There's probably other ways they could do it. I know you talked about potentially moving guys, pushing the corner back, pushing the half back, and whatnot. But the one thing the way Niall and Beggan's doing it is they're in control, so they're coming running out, and okay, it's a long run, but there's no real other moving parts bar them making decisions. So if you trust your goalie to do that and you're comfortable out the field, I'm not saying I fully agree with it, but I can see the merit. I can see the merit and the advantages it has in terms of stifling kickouts, and like Beggan coming up uncontested, or now coming up uncontested even with the ball and whatnot. It definitely creates overlaps, and there is positives to it, but how long it lasts is hard to know, because nobody's really got caught out yet. And that one, if Matty had scored a goal at the weekend, would you have seen Beggan out again? I'm not so sure.
I'm just trying to picture Mickey Hart in the dressing room encouraging Niall Morgan to go out and play as a sweeper. It's just it's bizarre.
Completely. It was we did encourage. We tried it in training a few times actually years ago, where I say for example, I was staying out and around the middle, and you were, because the problem was with Tyrone back then was that I was probably running back, but I was leaving my midfielder free.
Yeah.
And if he was doing damage, then it caused a bit of a problem, and we didn't want to play that whole defensive 14 men behind the ball, which we historically did. So we did tweak and amend it, and we sort of said, right, let's see how this works. And to be fair to Morgan, he cut out a lot of ball and done some, but then ultimately, whenever the nitty-gritty of the championship game, we didn't follow through with it. So
did you discuss when he goes on a run, like if there's any sort of space in front of him, he just goes full belt into the space. So what happened? What was supposed to happen when he goes on? If he goes on a run, who covers the goal, or who?
Normally what was happening in games and in-house games and whatnot as well was that he was going, but the forwards were coming to track him as well and trying to get the ball off him. So it always left one or two defenders back as such, but he always had the run on the forwards nearly. We never got caught out in training. There was never, I don't think, a goal or anything really caught off it, but the only thing was Niall normally got the our own 45 and delivered long passing. And then
he loves one off the outside of the boot too, doesn't he?
But these guys are getting braver now, and they're playing the short hand passes, and they're staying, and they're creating more overlaps and whatnot. So it's becoming a riskier game from and we've seen it at the weekend there that there was it's great to watch. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed seeing a different slant on this, but whether it's sustainable or not, and whether it's our own threat again in the semi-final, that'll be an interesting.
You see, I don't think it is sustainable, and I don't think Matty Donnelly needed to score that goal to show everybody how stupid this is, because it just took one Niall Morgan kick out, long one, to completely take the goalkeeper. And I do take your point, Colm. There's less moving parts by sending the goalkeeper out than there is, moving up a line. There's less moving parts. Now, the goalie has a long way to go back. And you saw from the Began chance, Alan, Ryan Wiley had to go back on the goal. It was 2 forwards versus 1 defender with Ryan Wiley covering the goal as Began's chasing him. So you do have to drop off a forward to be the goalkeeper. You can't just leave it empty and follow your man. So there is a moving part there in that scenario as well. And I just can't comprehend how one kick out can take your goalie out of the game. I just don't understand how this is a tactic. And we saw for years Kerry have a very aggressive press up. We saw when Dublin were a man down against Kerry in the 2019 final, how Cluxton pressed up and played corner back to give them that extra man out the field. And it's not hurling. You can't drive the ball down that quick. You will be able to filter back and get the goalkeeper in goals, someone back to switch over. How is this an idea in the modern game that you can leave your goalkeeper completely stranded and one kick out can take him out?
Yeah, I'd imagine now, it could be wrong, but at one stage, and I was watching this match with Jamie, my 12-year-old, and whatever at the tactics side of it, it just became a game of the two of us watching the goalies. And at one stage, he's up there, Dad, and it was Niall Morgan 30 yards in front of Rory Began's
But this was madness. He actually went running up to press a corner back on the other side.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if that would have been discussed kind of beforehand to say, right, press up all that way. I can understand, as you say, when he presses out into a pocket, maybe around his own right half or left half pack position on Rory Began's kick out or on Niall Morgan's kick out, just to try compress the field. And if I was a manager, that's as far as I'd be taking. I certainly wouldn't be encouraging him to go any further. I wouldn't be encouraging him to be under kick outs, because at one stage Rory Began, I think, got caught under a kick out too.
Yeah. And he's a big man, but so
they were nearly caught a couple of times, both of them.
They're big lads, and both Kim Cat, you talk really about putting the ball out on top of them. Niall Morgan would be really comfortable with a high ball coming out on top of him, as would Began, I would imagine.
Yeah, but Colin, what if he gets caught under it with 2 midfielders and the ball breaks down? He's gone out of the game again.
You've got the advantage of numbers, so if you bring across the midfielder, his man's going to come with him, so you're 2-on-1 then at that point, so you're still in the numbers positive in my head. I know it's more risky, I totally get that, but I just see them two. I'm just thinking of these two keepers. Began's as a massive character. Morgan is brilliant in midfield for his club and can catch high ball. And if you bring a man over, okay, it leaves it a wee bit more risky. But even if the ball broke down on one side, you're always going to have somebody else come back from the other side. So I don't know. I'm not saying I'm pro this, but I'm saying I can see the logic behind it.
I think there could be a little bit they're two experienced footballers that like to express themselves, and whether they're goalkeepers or outfielders.
Is there a bit of an ego? Is there a bit of ego in this?
I'm not sure if it's an ego. I think they're kind of two guys that are willing to take risks to try and go and win a match, and you need guys that it can go either way. You could win a kick out or you could lose a kick out, and in a game like that, it's a lot of the time it's the bravest team that might win out on the day, and it's the guys are just trying to do something. Obviously, you're taking a risk. I'm sure for them it's a calculated risk. It can go wrong, but it can go right as well. But as I said, I think I'd be in favour of pushing out to condense the field on an opposition kick out, but where Niall Morgan ended up in for one of Rory Began's kick outs 20 or 25 metres away from it, I thought was a little bit too much and could easily have been punished.
Yeah. Why can't the whole team just go zonal, Colm, and avoid this altogether? So if you're going man on man and following them everywhere, they can make sure there's a huge gap on one side, because if a team's marking man for man, you can drag a team pretty much anywhere and set up spaces around the field. Why would you not just go zonal? I remember Dublin with a zonal press under Jim Gavin towards the end, and it was the most intimidating. There was literally nowhere in the half of the field that you could put it without if you caught it without being kind of 2 or 3 lads condensing on you. I just think there has to be better ways than sticking your goalkeeper up into the other half of the field.
Yeah, you're right. Probably the zonal thing could. It depends on what way you want to set up. Ultimately, teams are tweaking and amending their kick-out strategies, and whether it's man on man and putting a full press on. Sometimes the zonal thing, you have to be very good at the zonal thing, and obviously Dublin probably were the best at it for a number of years. But like I remember with Tyrone and stuff, we played that zonal piece, and keepers are that good these days, and they can hit the pockets and they hit lines and double up on one side. They're overloading on one side, and therefore they still get the kick out away.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably an option. But if you're looking to really put a press on somebody and put a squeeze on and trying to cut out space, look, there's no. I don't think there's any easy answer in this. I do think it's going. I think Tyrone will try. I think Tyrone will try it again. I do think they'll. They're going to have to throw something different at Kerry. They're massive underdogs going forward in the next game. They have to throw something different here to say, look, Alan talked about risks there in the game, and I think coming from Tyrone over the last number of years, we've been playing safe. We've been playing within ourselves. To win this next game against Kerry, they have to take something. They have to show something different at them and really put them out of their comfort zone. And how it works, we're not sure yet. But I'm still in favour. I'm all for Morgan going forward and staying up and really putting the press on. I think it could work.
Against Kerry, I think they're in big trouble if they try that one. But I will give them Morgan as an example of being very good on the ball. I think Beggin's clumsy on the ball. I think he's, solos it up too high. He's actually pretty fast getting back on Matty Donnelly, but soloing fast, he wouldn't be that fast. He can look a bit awkward. I would be completely against him coming out too much. But the last one on this, Alan, I remember Kieran McGeeney, I think it was 4 years ago, tried a midfielder in goals, an unorthodox goalkeeper, and he started the kind of give it out, go get the return and come out. I can understand a goalie getting a 1-2, which they're not allowed to do now, but get a 1, another pass and come out. Every man is a man. Now you can run up the whole. I can see the logic in that, and I wouldn't discourage that. Can you see goalkeepers changing, roles completely, in the next 10 years? Where an outfielder, for example, shot stopping mightn't be as important as what can you do, like a compromised rules goalie, for example.
Well, I think to be fair, already shot stopping is no longer the most important trait of a goalkeeper. In the last few years, it's become all about the kick out. If you hadn't got a good kick out, or a very accurate kick out, then you just couldn't play top level into county football. But I think you will see it probably went a little bit too far at the weekend, but it is. And in fairness to Niall Morgan, you say he's very comfortable on the ball. If he comes out, sometimes the guy's a keeper, he's going to get caught here, but he's a good shimmy on him. He can turn back. He can kick a pass. He can give a long range pass in off. He can give a lovely ball in off the outside of his foot. I've seen him do it, and he's obviously he's a brave footballer. He's made mistakes in the past, lots of mistakes, and it doesn't deter him from doing what he wants to do. So he is kind of trends follow footballers or goalkeepers like they did with Stephen Cluxon. It'll be the same with Niall Morgan. He is getting to that level now where he's a very solid goalkeeper, and him doing something like that, I think we'll have other teams follow on. I think in club championships all over the country now this winter we're going to see goalkeepers herring up the field.
We tried it in a club game last week. Believe it or not, played an outfielder. We had to, but we were forced to play an outfielder.
We've all been there.
And it worked really well, and he scored a couple of points and actually done really well. But again, the shot stopping piece probably didn't really get exposed because we had to probably pull men back. But yeah, it could be a new trend starting.
Yeah, I've all said it. Any outfielder worth his salt can play in goals. Let's be honest. But Niall Morgan Niall Morgan's a showman. There's no doubt about that. I think he's bored out of his eyes in the goals.
Yeah,
he wants to get into the action. Anyways, lads, we'll move on to the match. 16-15, a game of two halves, Colm. How do you sum this up? Tyrone very good in the first half, especially the second quarter. We saw the Tyrone that Logan and Dewar are trying to encourage. Good kick passing, Donnelly, McCurry, good movement. And I thought what was impressive was Mark Bradley and Conor McKenna, when he could, try to link the two lines. There wasn't a huge gap because Bradley and McKenna at least were there for maybe a short ball and turn around and maybe, give it in from there again. So I was impressed with Tyrone in the first half.
Yeah, in the first half especially, they obviously built up the lead and whatnot, but they really impressed me on the Monaghan kick out. They really did put a squeeze in Beggan, and probably you don't often see Beggan under getting rattled, and he was throwing the arms up, and you could see him. He was very, very visibly annoyed at whether it was a movement or whether Tyrone were pressing really, really high up. For me that gave Tyrone a real platform, because there were Beggan was kicking the ball maybe over the line or wasn't getting it to where it was meant to go, and Tyrone played with a wee bit of fear. For the first time, I really enjoyed watching. They were direct. They tried a few long passes in. Some worked, some didn't work.
Yeah.
They were brave. I say Donnelly and McCurry inside were providing options, and Bradley obviously kicked one or two as well. So they played. And contrast that to Monaghan. I watched Monaghan, and I was going, they got the Tyrone's 45 or whatever it was, and Tyrone started to man them up, and they nearly were playing. They were happy to go lateral, and they're happy to slow it down, but they were struggling, I think, to get through, and maybe that the because it was a final, and it's in Croke Park, it nearly showed, it nearly looked like they were a wee bit afraid to actually go to Tyrone, and didn't trust themselves after the way they were left themselves open against Armagh. But yeah, look, obviously the third quarter was a different story, and Tyrone really run the cash, and it could have been very different. Had not, I think they got. This was McInnesby in the second half, went to play a pass inside for a goal chance, and Tyrone went back up the other end to make it 13-12, and sort of shored the thing up and sort of control the game a wee bit after that. But Tyrone needed the water break in the third quarter. They were under pressure. But to be fair to them, they controlled the game after that, and I thought and closed it out well, albeit Monaghan probably made too late mistake. They took two shots at the end, which I don't think a Dublin or a Kerry would do. They would get the ball to the right man and get the ball over the bar. So, but all in all, happy from a Tyrone perspective, obviously. But there's still work to do.
Yeah, there was a stat at half time where Tyrone had 19 attacks and they got 19 shots off, and they scored 11 times. Monaghan had 20 attacks, they got 13 shots off, and they scored 6. And the very obvious is that Tyrone were direct with their attacks. They mixed it up well. And like Colm says, Monaghan ran everything and a lot of the time turned back and gave it back. And now Tyrone looked like they were dangerous in attack and incredibly tight at the back, with bodies back. And it was just like Monaghan played into their hands.
Yeah, well, like, what you're going to get with Monaghan. You're going to get a lot of intensity. Probably not as good a football team as Tyrone are in terms of individuals, if we're being honest about it. And in the first half, Tyrone looked much better team, and you could definitely see the stamps of the new management team in terms of there was a lot more kick pass than what we'd be used. I think on the Sunday game last night they highlighted maybe a little bit of a gap in the kind of in the half forward line around the link area, and it was obviously from the TV it's difficult to see that, but it looked watching it that there was very good shape and structure about.
Yeah, I thought McKenna and Bradley were kind of trying to bridge that.
Yeah, they were. McKenna came out and Tyrone have such lovely footballers. Like, everyone on their team can deliver good kick passes, and they looked like they were going to run away with it, to be fair. But what you get with Monaghan, they just never give up, especially with Banty in charge, and they came flying out in the second half. And maybe Tyrone weren't expecting. Maybe they thought the game was going to peter out a little bit. They looked so far ahead in the first half. They looked so much more superior than Monaghan. But I think what impressed me about Tyrone as well, when it got to 12-all, you're thinking, God, Tyrone look under pressure here now, missing the few guys, maybe the week they've had. But in fairness, they kicked on again after that. I think they got the next 3 scores after that, did they? And McShane got a great score to put them 13-12. But after he'd had a ropey enough start after he came on, he missed a couple of balls, but he got a great score at 12-all to put Tyrone a point up. And I think a fella like him, we've spoken about benches, the three of us, a lot of time. Bringing a fella like him off the bench, I think, is huge. Like, just the presence he gives in a full forward line, the ability he has, and now whether he starts or not the next day, I'm not sure. But certainly having a fella like him coming off the bench is a huge plus for Tyrone. Yeah,
he definitely. But he doesn't look himself though, Colm. You can see why he's not starting. Like, he's fumbling balls. He fumbled 2 balls, then he got a point, then he had a very bad one off the left hand side, which he probably shouldn't have taken on. It kind of there was an air of desperation about it or something. You can see why he's just. You wouldn't criticise the management for having him not in at the start.
No, definitely not. They say he came on and obviously fumbled a few balls and got his point, and then kicked that one with the left foot. I was screaming at the TV, why would you be taking that on? He looked off balance and didn't look like it was a good option for him. But look, he's coming into games trying to, like, when yourself, coming into a game, you really want to make an impact. You really want to get on the ball early, people and get a score or whatnot. And you can see that he's making a lot of runs, and he's trying to influence the game, and that'll come. But I can see, like, you've got to remember, he's come back from a very, very bad injury and a lot of setbacks over the period of time that he was out. And, like, just from the sound bites out of the Tyrone camp over the last few months, is that he is a wee bit rusty, and he probably isn't at that full match pace. And we're sort of the stage of the year now where I'm not sure you can trust him at this stage to start him. Given the rest of the lads are sort of have played a lot more football than him, and at this stage of the year, if you're not fully match fit, you can't. I don't know. It's very hard to get fully match fit in a training or in house games and whatnot. So it's probably the best use of him, and from what we've seen to date, is probably that he's going to be that impact player and come off the bench for Tyrone. And that's probably, and Tyrone is, and they are in a good place with that. They have plenty of lads that are come on change the game at the moment, whether it's in forward or defence. So
I think to be like a fella like him coming in, he's going to attract attention. And not like there's other good players in the Tyrone bench, and over the years, it's probably an area Tyrone have struggled a little bit. Maybe they're bringing the likes of Mark Bradley off the bench, maybe McCurry off the bench in previous years. Very good footballers in their own right, but a fella like McShane coming in with his presence is going to attract attention, whether it's against Kerry or whether against Dublin or Mayo or whatever. And like, I think he's a great option coming in off the bench, because you'd be worried about him coming in. He can cause
against Mayo.
Huh?
Against Mayo.
Yeah, well, maybe, who knows?
Mayo have going to beat Dublin.
Huh?
Who are you trying to fool? Now, come here. One other thing about Tyrone, I'll throw this one to you, Ellen, is because, we're praising them for their kick passing in. But they're not as slick at it as the likes of Kerry. Some of the balls going in were from a good bit back. Like, when the ball goes in, if McCurry doesn't kick a point from the ball that goes in, or Donnelly doesn't kick a point, and dummy solo, that option off the shoulder isn't there, that's what separates the likes of Kerry away from Tyrone, who are kind of finding their feet, with that style. It was nice to see, because they had variety to their attacks, and they obviously had to keep Monaghan. They kept Monaghan honest by not knowing what they're going to do. But it's not as it's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's a work in progress. And I think, to be fair, that's the style of football they play down in Kerry all the time. So a lot of those guys are used to growing up playing like that. Those little pop passes running off the shoulder, little simple hand pass off somebody running through. So it's probably a change for a lot of Tyrone guys. And like as you said, we spoke about the shape and stuff, and they're still committing a lot of men to defence when they don't have the ball. So it's about, we spoke about it the last show, how you keep that balance between the forwards and the back, making sure you have the men up that you can play like that, making sure you can get support runners into the likes of Donnelly or McShane or McCurry, whoever's in there. And I'm sure that's something the management team will look at, and they'll work on it. And I suppose it's when you're giving the kick passes in, like if you're kicking it in from 50 or 60 yards out, it's difficult to get runners there because it's so far out. But if you can maybe get it to the half forward line or the 45 yard line, so it's just a 20 or a 30 yard kick pass, then you can get men after it. You can get men in after it. So I suppose it's when they're giving the kick pass into the full forward line, maybe they just need to get it a little bit further up the field, so when the passes are going in, they can get support runners there. But it's definitely something they can add to the game, and I'm sure it's something the management will look at before the next day. Yeah,
it's the next step. I suppose it is bridging that gap. What about Monaghan, Colm? Darren Hughes off at half time, Carl O'Connell off at half time. A little bit wasteful he was in the first half, and they improved a lot when these lads went off. And I think Darren is 35, Carl is 33. Carl hasn't had a good season at all. Hard to understand how they could bring that energy to the second half but couldn't bring it to the first half. It's always psychologically. How is that explained?
And I don't even know whether it was the personnel difference. Like, I don't know, the couple of changes, people will very easily look, they took a couple of men off, and everything was great, and the men that came in really picked it up. I think it's more a psychological piece where, I said it when I was watching Monaghan in the first half. They nearly looked afraid. They nearly looked like, we conceded so much against Armagh. We needed to sort of, feel our way in this game and be a wee bit cagey about it. And like when you're 11-6 or whatever at half time, you're like, the only thing Bonty could have said to them is, look, lads, you just have to go out here in this third quarter and let loose, and that's, they did that, and they significantly improved in that third quarter, and say really put Tyrone in the back foot. So look, the personnel is one thing. You were always going to change it up. He was always going to change it up at half time. It was probably one of Monaghan's poorest halves of football probably that they played all year, and yeah, look, it's hard to say. It's very, very difficult to say whether it's a personnel thing. I think just psychologically they turned that switch, and Tyrone probably didn't expect it. They probably didn't. They expected probably a backlash of some sort. But if you're in that Tyrone dressing room, you're saying, look, lads, let's the next 5 minutes, let's control the game, let's control the tempo of the game, let's slow it down, and that's really don't let Monaghan get in any sort of momentum, and they weren't able to do that. So you have to give credit credit to Monaghan for a massive improvement in that third quarter.
Yeah, a big one. And you have to give Niall Morgan a bit of credit. When Monaghan would get a score, you'd be always looking now, can they get another one? And Morgan found Kilpatrick with a couple of very good kick-outs, you know, to take that kind of pressure off. The one thing about Monaghan, you often see who was giving McCarron the ball when he was getting it. Conor McManus. You know, like their half-forward line, this buzzing, fast half-forward line, poor Aaron Mulligan taken off. He hasn't, you know, been the same the last couple of games. You know, he would have been friendly with Ogie. Who passed away. Like, then you have Stephen O'Hanlon, who didn't show up on the day, and Bannigan, who did a lot of work but wasn't around that half forward line. That was a big strength of theirs, Alan, that kind of young, fast, smart half forward line.
Yeah, it is, but it was probably a level up for them going into a Ulster final like that yesterday, and like those lads will obviously learn a lot from it, and kind of in defeats like that, especially close defeats, there's kind of huge lessons in it. But I think they just found Tyrone maybe too intense on the day, especially in the first half. They just couldn't get to the pitch of the game. And just on Colm's point there, I'd say Banty went in at half time and was furious with how they performed in the 20 minutes before half time. And like I say, they just came out, I say, in the Tyrone dressing room, they were thinking, okay, we're halfway there here, now let's just keep this going. And then you get caught with just Monaghan up in the intensity levels. And like, in fairness to McCarron, he was decent yesterday, he kicked some good scores, and they probably just needed a little bit more support up there, the two lads. McManus was actually doing a lot of work around the field as well. He was playing out in front of McCarron a lot. You would have preferred him a little bit closer to goal.
Yeah.
But obviously the two boys are very dangerous inside, McCarron and Conor McManus, but probably could have done with a bit more support from the rest of the forward line. Yeah.
Performance of the weekend then. Matty Donnelly got man of the match column. Like, I mean, you know, he had a very good first half. He didn't have a good second half now. He went out midfield after Cottle McShane came on. He's on the freeze as well. That's a worry for Tyrone. No offence to Matty. Like, I mean, that's one area where Paul Donaghy is a loss. You know, he missed a bad one in the second half. You cannot miss them at that level.
No, absolutely not. It was like maybe 21 out and hit the post or whatever, and that's something that, yeah, they're worth their weight in gold, having free taker. And people talk about whether you can carry a free taker, you know, for them. Like Niall Morgan's obviously fairly good. Well, I know he missed a couple of the weekend, but it's normally fairly accurate from distance. So, and McCurry obviously from the other side now. So, you might see that the McCurry may decide to start taking them from the other side to a certain point. And I'm not sure. I'm just thinking around the team there. Matty probably the best placed if Donaghy's not on to take them right-footed ones. So it's, yeah, I don't want to see too many on the far right on the right side unless, you know, because I think they'll have to go to Morgan and whatnot. But look, Matty had a serious game. You're probably between himself and then obviously Kieran McGeary. Look, for me, was
good again, yeah,
incredible. Like there was one period of play where he cut a ball out and made a real good dispossession and was up the other end and ended up getting fouled for free and whatnot. Like, so he was all over the place, and like he's been probably, you know, he's got a lot of yellow cards. He's been taken off in games, and you know the last two games against Donegal and Monaghan, he's been really impressive for me.
Yeah, he definitely has. Anybody else? Like, I was looking through for performance of the weekend. There wasn't that many people on the winning team, which usually is, you know, putting their hand up of saying outstanding, outside of like McGeary and Matty Donnelly. And Matty Donnelly didn't have a great second half. It's a weird one, isn't it?
Would it be fair to say that Hampshire done fairly well in McManus?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, yeah. No, I think he did. But like, I suppose scored an unbelievable point. But like McManus did he got on a bit of ball and was playing further out the field than you would like from a Monaghan point of view, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose that's fair. I thought he was fairly good. Obviously, you know, McManus is always the go-to, and maybe he was being forced out the field because they weren't getting that ball inside and whatnot. But I thought it was a very good, like, what McManus scored one from play, and it was that one that it looked like nearly it got deflected over the bar the way he kicked it. But
yeah, there was a crucial turnover the last play of the game too. A ball was kicked up the line to McManus, and Hampsey was right alongside him, and he just got a little fist in and won the ball back, and it was game over. And I think Tyrone kept the ball after that.
Wasn't the greatest kick at that stage of the game,
no,
was it?
No, it wasn't. He probably should have turned and come back, but you'd expect, like, Conor McManus was probably out in front when he looked, but I think with the pace of Hampsey and he's a really aggressive fullback, he probably just got there just in time to get a touch. But it was a crucial turnover at that stage.
Oh, it was game over when they didn't win that. That was their last attack, pretty much.
Yeah, I think Tyrone kept the ball after that, but I'd go for Matty Donnelly just because of the dummy solo, to be honest.
What about Ryan Wiley? Did a good job on McCurry, I thought.
Yeah, he did. I thought McCurry still kicked a couple of decent scores. I just, like, So McCurry looks like he's playing with so much confidence now. If he gets half a chance, he's kicking over. He lovely one with his left. He followed on with one with his right. I know I kind of questioned him last week on the show, saying, is he, like, where did he rate against the really good forwards in the country? And look, we're probably going to find out over the next game or two exactly where he rates, because it's coming to crunch time now. But certainly in this Ulster Championship, he's probably been Tyrone's best forward. He looks like he's oozing confidence at the moment.
I thought Michael McKernan had a good game, Colm. He was all over the field.
Yeah, look, Mike. Yeah, absolutely. He gives Tyrone a bit of everything. He can do a day job of man marking and a fairly aggressive man marker at times. And
he was out of favour. He was out of favour at the start of the year, wasn't he?
I think he was, yeah. And I sort of was finding it strange because he was a fairly solid part of probably what Mickey was about and in his time. And you were at that stage of thinking he's a guaranteed starter at that point. And then the guys came in, but he's obviously worked his way through the training and the team, and now is again he's he can do a bit of everything. And in terms of he can do that marking piece, but he's a baller too. Like, he can get up the pitch and he can take scores and whatnot as well and link play. So he had a fairly solid piece. Ryan Wiley was very good, I thought, as well. But like McCurry did, you can keep someone like McCurry quiet for a period of time, but he only takes a few chances for him to kick a few points, and you're looking at the end of the game going, he finished with 0-4 or whatever, and you're going, well, did he really have that good a day on him? He took a mark one time, like McCurry, near the second half, which he's not wouldn't be noted for his fielding like that there, and kicked it over. So he still had a quieter game than what he had, in terms of what you expect from him, but still not a bad day for him.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think we will give it to Matty Donnelly. The dummy solo reminded me of Alan Brogan 2001 debut. 2002 was it? All right, close enough, wasn't it?
I reminded Mark O'Reilly about it a few years after that, maybe about 10 years after that. Yeah, we had a bit of crack about it, but it was. No, it wasn't Mark O'Reilly. It might have been Cormac. I was Mark O'Reilly.
It was Mark O'Reilly. Yeah. That was a nice little 3 points on the debut that day.
3 points that day. Yeah, it was my debut. Second game. That was Leinster semi-final.
Right. Okay. I thought that was your debut. 1-2 then in the final. See,
yeah,
was that Laker Gale? You gave me a great refresher on your. All right, we'll leave it there and we'll talk about the Leinster final next. All right, so 11 in a row for Dublin. I'm going to ask you how's the head this morning, Alan. But genuinely, that makes no posy bit of odds to Dublin fans at this stage, does it?
I wouldn't say it makes no odds. It's another medal at the end of the day. But I think in the overall scheme of things, kind of probably not. We probably knew. But
having that many Leinsters cheapens Leinster, though. How many do you have? You don't even remember. 11. Do you get my point though? If you've 11 Leinster medals, does 11 or 13 mean any difference? It's irrelevant really.
It's a step along the way. We know the provincials. We don't have to get into it today, but we know the provincial championships in certain areas have a lot of problems. And in terms of the overall All-Ireland competition, they're probably not really fit for purpose in terms of you look at the competitiveness of the Ulster Championship compared to the Leinster Championship. But hopefully that'll be addressed over the next year or so. But I think for the players it's another step along the way. It's still a medal. I still value my Leinster Championships. I suppose the more you win, they're there to be won. You just go and win them. That's
something to win, yeah.
Something to win. You go and win them.
I suppose for players, they enjoy winning a Byrne Cup. They just want, it's a competition that you want to win. I'm not saying, but it definitely cheapens it. It definitely gets to the point. Now you look at Dublin yesterday, Alan, right? Completely off colour as far as I'd be concerned. Still won Leinster by 8 points. No huge celebrations. There is no doubt Dublin aren't at the level that we're used to. I'll give you some examples. Conor Callaghan tapping it into the goalie's hands off his left from the 14-yard line. Con running into Kieran Kilkenny in the second half, not really knowing where he was going. He had a nightmare. Kilkenny was done for over-carrying twice. Now, the first time was very harsh under Hill 16. James McCarthy getting turned over. You don't see that. Dean Rock driving a Gary Owen up in the air. When do you see that? And then running after it. And he had a face on him on the bench. It looked a little bit like he wasn't too happy about being taken off. Fenton, nightmare. not in it at all, kicking an uncharacteristic wide, which probably, you know, he would usually get. Niall Scully having a half-hearted left-footed shot blocked down in front of Hill 16. He could have scored a point way before that. Lackadaisical. Paddy Small hitting the bloody post from 40 metres out on his left-hand side. Like, I mean, that's some list of... This is the Dublin senior football team.
Yeah, it was a disappointing enough performance from Dublin. I think if you're looking at it, and if you take away the opposition and the competition that it was, if you look at the Dublin performance, there was lots of stuff that they'd be annoyed about, and it's probably no harm that it's happened now. But it's like, to be fair, they haven't been great the last couple of games either.
No.
And like,
apparently that was an improvement of the Meath performance. I didn't see the whole Meath match. Like, I mean, there must have been shite that day altogether.
Yeah, look, I don't know. There was talk about like our Dublin board. Maybe the whole pace of the game was terrible. Like, in fairness to Kildare, I thought they defended quite well and they stuck in the game in the first half, but they never really showed any intent of trying to go and win the game.
No.
And they kind of let Dublin play this possession game where they passed back and forth the field, and they never really pushed out on them to try and force any turnovers or force Dublin to come and really beat them. So even though Kildare did okay defensively for periods of the game, they never really looked like they wanted the game, or never really believed that they could win the game. And I think you saw it in the interview with Daniel Flynn afterwards. Like, he nearly said that, like we came out to enjoy ourselves and to put in as good a performance as we could. So that shows they probably never really believed that they could win the game.
No, it didn't seem like that from his.
And that was, I think that may have been a cause for the pace of the game. For long periods of the game was very slow and very pedestrian.
Yeah, there's more though, Colm. This was the closest Leinster final since 2013. It was the first time since 2001 that the opposition has scored more goals than them. And for the second game in a row, Dublin's bench haven't scored as much as the opposition's bench. These are all stats that are very, very unusual. And, like, I mean, a lot of people talking about the retirements, right? So you've Stephen Cluxton, who we're not sure the story is. Eric Lowndes was not a starter at all last year. A lot of games he wasn't getting off the bench. Michael Darmacaulay the same. Paul Mannion was only coming on as a sub. Paddy Andrews didn't feature at all. Keane O'Sullivan didn't feature at all. They're all the retirements. I don't think the retirements have hit Dublin. There's no doubt the injuries has affected, you know, the level of player they're bringing off the bench, because when they get the injuries cleared up with Merchant back, you have John Small back, you have McDade back. You know, like Brian Howard was coming off the bench last year. You know, and so was Paul Mannion. Cormac Costello could be back on the bench. You know, getting the injuries cleared up is a bigger thing for Dublin than, you know, the talk of, you know, retirements has weakened them, which I don't think it has.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree on that. We talked on the show a few weeks ago back as well about Dublin's bench, and is it as strong at this current time as what historically it has been when you're bringing Mannion and these guys on? At the moment, it doesn't look like it. Obviously, it was, as you said there, about Small and Merchant. I think there were obviously Merchant come on and Small started or whatever, and they're 2+ points to have them boys back, like, because they will shore things up and they definitely will add value. Even when Merchant come on, and he was just adding a wee bit of injection of pace, which Dublin didn't really seem to have at times. I was watching. Alan's right. Like, Kildare set out in a way probably just to stay in the game. They didn't have any ambition probably to win the game in that regard, and it's still not a great performance from Dublin. There's still question marks. I'm not going to say there's massive cracks here that, you know, you're going, they're not going to win the All-Ireland or they're not going to beat Mayo and whatnot, but there's definitely chinks that we've talked about the last number of weeks and uncharacteristic things happening with Dublin at the moment. But at the same time, Fenton was poor at the weekend, and in all reality, O'Callaghan wasn't great. I said Kilkenny had a lot of mistakes, and they still won the game comfortably. You know, it's still 8 points. It's still a big enough margin where we're used to seeing Dublin win by 20 points every game, and we're sort of questioning, are they good enough? Because they're only winning by 8. So there's definitely a lot of stuff going on that's we're not used to seeing. But look, they're coming up against teams that aren't trying to win. I don't think, you know, they're just trying to stay in the game and defend. I remember watching part of it in Dublin. We're just knocking the ball around, and Kildare just were happy to sit back. They were getting well beat, and they were still just staying in their shell and not coming out. And they were going, look, lads, you know, please go and have a go. Even if, like, it rewinded me back to where Tyrone were at a number of years ago. I remember us sitting back in with 14 men behind the ball, maybe everybody, and Dublin were knocking the ball around, and I was screaming for boys to go out and go and make a tackle. If you miss, that's okay, but at least make them do something. And the weekend was something similar. You were sort of just sitting watching the game, going, well, they're just going to knock the ball about. But yeah, look, the big thing is that Dublin's definitely making a lot more mistakes, and I'm just not sure. The guys have brought on to date, Alan will obviously know him a lot better than I will, but I just don't see that they're the same quality that they're bringing on. And they don't seem to have that direct impact in a game that to get Dublin over the line. But again, we'll just have to see when they come up against stronger opposition over the next game or so, and that'll tell us where they're at. Obviously,
my fear as a Dublin supporter, kind of watching on, is that a lot of the guys in the team now look very safe in their places, and that hasn't always been the way for the last number of years. No one felt safe, because of the strength and like. I'll come back to the bench in a sec, but the strength of the Dublin bench, say with the likes of Michael Darmacali, Kevin McMenamin, these guys that were seasoned into county footballers, the younger guys that were getting the 15 shirts, were ahead of these guys, knew they were under pressure to perform every day because of the guys that were on the bench. And now there might just be a bit of a case that the guys that are on the team now know that it's
they're a level above
well, not even that they're level above, but it's a quite inexperienced bench. So is Desi really going to make a call to say drop a Dean Rock to maybe play a Colin Pascal? Like, it's probably unlikely, even though I thought yesterday, you mentioned on Merchant when he came on, he injected pace. I thought the two Pascals came on and actually looked like they wanted to make an impact on the game, to try and make an impact on the game. They injected a bit of pace in. Collie could have got a goal. Ryan got a good score when they linked up well. So at some stage you got to say, I think as a management team, right, these guys are actually coming on, they're injecting pace into the game, they're trying to make an impact. I need to play one of these to give them a chance. You need to let a bench know, you need to let a squad know that if somebody's doing well, they're going to get rewarded with a spot. Whereas at the moment it looks like the team is just a little bit too settled for me, and when you have a settled team, that breeds a bit of
complacency,
a bit of complacency, because you're not going to be dropped. And my fear is that creeping in a little bit. I might be wrong, and it's very difficult to analyse Dublin at the moment. You say, because they're playing against teams that are probably slightly inferior than them, they just seem happy to win the games and just keep trucking along, happy to hold on to the ball and force teams to come out on them. And if a team doesn't want to come out on them, then they're happy to hold on to the ball. They don't really want to kind of go and obliterate teams like we used to see them do 3 and 4 years ago. But so it's difficult to analyse, but there's a little fear that maybe there's a little bit of complacency setting in to maybe the first 15 guys, because those guys know that they're nearly guaranteed their spot, which hasn't always been the case up till maybe a year or two ago.
Just on that, to be fair to Desi, the injuries have crippled him, because he wasn't afraid to put Howard and Mannion on the bench last year. Do you know what I mean? I don't think he's afraid to make those decisions. It's just like, Jesus, leaving Dean Rock off for Pascal is such a huge call.
I'm just using that as an example.
I'm trying to understand a little bit why. I agree with you. There might be a little bit of complacency set in because of the lack of competition. But they were back to their boring best in the second half column. Like, I mean, they refused some shots in the first half, which the Niall Scully one that he got a half block down. He had a shot on there, a tap over point. He had to play another pass to get it a little bit closer, and then got blocked down. Like, the refusal to take on a shot that's even 80% sure thing is just infuriates me. And at half time they discussed that they were taking on too many shots in the first half, amazingly, and in the second half, waiting to hear this stat, they took 12 shots and scored 11 points. Only Fenton hit a wide, and they were back to their purely boring best of playing it on the outside. And again, you don't blame it too much. This is Kildare's fault. Kildare should be out tackling them, but at the same time, geez, Dublin take it to extremes when they see that in front of them, don't they?
Yeah, but that's why they're so good. They did this. They obviously, there was a lot of mistakes, and they obviously discussed that and tried to. The second half, as you say, they nearly went back to what they were good at. They were playing around. They were staying very wide, and they were creating overlaps and trying to. It's difficult to play against. Obviously, they were nearly facing a team that I say they were just I spoke about getting men behind the ball and stopping scores and just not really any ambition, but. They definitely did work it a lot better, and I would say if they continued the same vein in the first half, where they started to kick wides and they were taking on shots that they normally didn't. Normally, you don't associate them taking on, and that started. I didn't realise that was the start in the second half. 11 scored out 12. So and that's where we're sort of going. We're very critical of Dublin at the moment and saying that they're making a lot of mistakes and that, but. can they then just switch it on when they need to? And again, the quality of the opposition, we have to say that it's not there yet. So I like the semi-final is going to be their test. Like that's going to be, we'll know. Like, and again, it's nearly too late at that point. For us to say anything, because they're, we're saying now that they're not looking great, and ever since the first day out and that, they haven't let it up at all. So it's just whether they can turn it on the way they need to.
They're going very conservative as well, Alan. So you see a lot of teams, like, they nearly left Kildare to 2 or 3 zonal players the whole way through the game, which makes it very hard to get through. Instead of moving a couple of players up, or bring Johnny Cooper stayed back full-time sweeper, for example, instead of when that stalemate situation arrives, a corner back comes in, injects a good bit of pace in it. Now a zonal lad comes out to him, he might turn around, you've taken one zonal lad out of it. They didn't seem to attack with as many players. They seem to struggle to get through a little bit, maybe even like Kerry against Tipperary. I know it's not easy to play through, but you kind of have to be brave by nearly pairing one-on-one off in that half of the field.
Yeah, and look, maybe it's a case that they were playing slightly within themselves. It didn't look like there was any real intensity, or like, even I know Kildare had men back, but you're right, it never looked like Dublin had any real intent to try and kind of break them down or try and put a move together to try and get a goal at all. Like, it was all very much
individual kind of
passed
stuff
around. Let's see, can we just get a gap to kick the score or whatever. And I would have liked to see a bit more attacking vigour for Dublin in terms of injecting pace at certain stages and stuff. When you're used to seeing Johnny, like, Johnny's not afraid to get up and go on an overlap. Or there's the likes of Brian Howard, like, is a forward tradition. He's now playing centre back. He never overlapped at all. He never really got past midfield at all. He very much held that centre back position.
They're more worried about Daniel Flynn, maybe.
Well, they always Dublin have always only played with one extra man back. That was kind of the rule over the years. We just need one extra man.
Do you even need that one? If
you'll never leave Daniel Flynn.
But they can't kick it that far, They can't kick it that far. Like, you will get somebody back, I suppose.
They'll always play someone in front of them, but it looked like there was maybe 3 men staying back at stage instead of pushing up on the Kildare guys and just occupying. Because if you have men, when you have Kildare men like that, you need to try and occupy them. So somebody needs to run past them so you can pull one of the defenders away, and that might leave a gap for someone else to run into. But we didn't really see that from Dublin yesterday, and maybe it's a case of that they're playing slightly within themselves, but it's like, kind of playing slightly within yourselves. Is that actually a thing? You're going out in the Leinster final, like,
they still scored 20 points against an extremely defensive team. It's weird, isn't it? Like, that would have been unheard of 4 years ago.
Yeah, no, maybe we're being overly critical. Maybe just because they're not playing or haven't managed to click like they did a few years ago, that maybe the team is waning. But look, as you say, they still scored 20 points, won the game at a canter. But like, I suppose there's a lot of question marks around, and that kind of talk, like, kind of get in on lads like, say, Con's not having his best season, Kieran's doing okay, he missed a few chances yesterday.
I thought he was very good in the second half.
He was good in the second half. Brian Fenton's having a quiet enough season. Can that sort of talk start to get in on lads, and they start to think, the confidence starts to drain a little bit, because they are going to need to produce. Like, I know we could talk about Mayo, and maybe Mayo aren't a team that'll beat Dublin, but they'll certainly press up on their kickouts. They'll certainly ask questions that they haven't been asked so far this year. So at the moment, we don't know, and the Dublin management team don't really know how Dublin are going to react when that happens, because they haven't faced it this year.
Yeah, that's a problem. And you're looking at Cavan and Mayo last year. This year's going to be Mayo and Kerry. It look, or potentially, geez, I forgot Colin was on the line there. Kerry or Tyrone, Colin. Here, but Jack O'Connor said here.
That's the way he's wanted up there, Colin, isn't it?
5-1 Tyrone are. It's not
Jesus,
bad.
That's a very
Somebody said to me yesterday they're 5-1, which I think is madness.
Yeah, it's very long on. But Jack O'Connor said, this is a funny quote from Jack O'Connor. He says, I thought some of the commentary during the week was a bit over the top. People were talking about us getting trimmings and getting hammerings and conceding 4 and 5 goals and all that. So he was pissed off about the talk, but then set up his team exactly in a way to prevent that from happening. So I don't think he had much belief in it. Like, we talk a lot about Dublin. It's very hard to be too critical of Kildare, because how are Kildare any different to Laois, Westmeath, or any of the teams that play Dublin in Leinster? Nearly all of them play a 2-man full forward line and everybody else defends, and you could have one. So there was a feature of Kildare played, Jesus, Fergal Conway, they got a good few turnovers in the first half from Dublin messing and not being at their best. But they had no attacking option. But Fergal Conway actually had to turn around. It was one of those turnovers where he came bursting out and the crowd cheered. And he looked up ahead and he probably said Johnny Cooper covering and maybe Brian Howard, and he just turned back around. And it's just like, when are teams going to realise that there's two sides of play? Without those turnovers are great, but without having enough players up the field, you can't score. So it's self-defeating.
It's and I watched the game thinking they've Kildare are playing the way Tyrone did years ago, and that's reality. And Tyrone were such we had there were serious fitness levels in our team, and I'm sure Kildare is no different. But no matter how fit and well conditioned you are, to be able to play that game, it takes an awful lot of energy to do that. And I think I can't be too highly critical of Kildare because, as I said, we did that for years, but it's not going to win you the game. It's really not.
It's almost impossible, isn't it?
It keeps the score down. Like we did, okay, always got to a certain point in the championship where we were doing well, and but then we always come unstuck against one of the big teams. And look, it's hard. Like Kildare probably aren't there yet, and they're probably thinking, look, Jack O'Connor probably thinking, look, we'll take this. This is a step forward from where we were last year, and they have to start putting the same as me. Then these teams, your building blocks are trying to break Dublin down as the years go on. They're not there yet. You can't be too highly critical of them trying to stay in the game and hope for a few goals to do that. But as you rightly said, when you turn the balls over, if you have no outlet in the half forward line and then ultimately in the full forward line, you're not going to score. So you're just and Dublin weren't overly risky either. They weren't going high full court press where you could get in behind them too often. So
that's the thing.
Look, I think if you want to play like that, you have to have a couple of game plans. So you play like that for 15 minutes, then let's change, let's push up and the kick out for 10 minutes to see what happens, then revert back into our defensive structure. Because if you play like that for the whole game, as you say, you're not going to win the game. It is self-defeating. And I think and you can't be too critical of Kildare because that they did ship a big loss against Dublin a couple of years ago. But I think where you can be, when they got the goal with however much time was left at that stage, then you say, right, everyone push up, let's just go for a few minutes and see what happens. Whereas they didn't.
We don't see
Dublin
enough
got the next 3 scores.
We don't see enough of that though, Ellen, right? So the quarters now are perfect. So say 15 minutes, and if I saw Kildare coming out and putting everyone in behind the ball 15 minutes, now Dublin will go into their meeting and they'll go, Jesus lads, and Desi go, right, we're going to have to play. Now all of a sudden you've completely changed what you're doing. And now the Dublin lads are trying to communicate in the field, stop that, now we can kick it in. And before they figure this out, it's half time. Why don't we see that from teams? Yeah,
it's difficult to do. I suppose you spend they'd only 2 weeks to prepare for the Dublin game. They're trying to implement this game plan, and if you start talking about 2 game plans, does it get very confusing? And I think I think that's what needs to be done. And guys at that level are capable of doing that. If there's good communication on the field, if the message is right coming from the management, guys are capable. And we used to do it with Pat Gilroy. We actually practice it with Pat Gilroy, where we change game plan in the middle of a half. In league matches we do it just to practice for the championship, and a call will go out and we just change the way we were playing. And some days it worked, some days it didn't, but you learned a lot from it. And then it's difficult to do in 2 weeks, but the water breaks are perfect for it. Maybe we obviously didn't have water breaks then, but the water breaks are because you can have a chat about it at the break, say right we're going to change now. And I was disappointed with Kildare after they got the goal that they didn't really try pressure up on Dublin kickouts now, and even try and get the next score. Dublin got the next 3 scores after that, and the game was over again.
Game was over. It just fizzled out.
I was actually, my dad was at the game, and I was talking to him this morning. He said even after they got the goal, there was a cheer, but there was no real excitement in the crowd or passion on the pitch that you thought, right, Kildare are going to come again. Right. It was just it just reverted back to type, and the same thing happened again for the next 15 minutes after that, which I think was disappointing.
You often see those game plans, I suppose, Colin, working all right in the first half where the energy levels are very high. And to be fair, because Dublin weren't playing well at all in the first half, Kildare missed a lot. Like Ben McCormick, his shooting boots weren't on at all in the first half. I think Fergal Conway, Daniel Flynn, a good few of them, 1 or 2 into the goalie's hands. It could have been 9-7, 9-8 at half time, and they're in the game. Now, we've seen Westmeath and teams being close to Dublin at half time because of those game plans and everything. You won't win over the course of the game. Dublin will figure it out. But then maybe the point is to maybe do something different in the second half. But look, it doesn't look like teams are happy doing that. But Daniel Flynn and Jimmy Hyland caused a few problems inside. The problem is that they left Johnny Cooper as the sweeper. Now, would you not, if you were Jack O'Connor, say to Ben McCormick, Ben, get back down here. We don't want to cover a man. Now you go down. Johnny marks you. Will Dublin bring back another lad then to start covering? Then at least you're throwing them off what they want to do. I did think that leaving the 2 men covered by Johnny Cooper, while Ben McCormick doesn't want to be back there anyways, just leave 3 up there.
Yeah, the more you leave up, the more space there is in Croke Park for them to puncture holes for you. So
yeah,
look, the big thing is, Alan spoke around it there, is trying to transition mid-game, and historically that's been difficult for teams, and that's why Dublin have won an awful lot. You said, Alan, there that you used to practice it like probably from our point of view, we only done it in the last 2 or 3 years, maybe tried to do that. It's very, very difficult to implement, and they said the water breaks and whatnot are allowing them. It allows you a platform to do that now, whether they're staying in or not. But teams should be able to now at this point. They should be able to have 2 to 3 different plans of whatever way they want to play and shift when they need to. But I suppose the big fear with Kildare was that if they pushed more men up and really tried to leave men up the pitch, it would have left so many gaps at the back. And then Dublin doing what you said there, the second half, they were very fairly efficient. They would have punctured more holes, and they probably would have ended up with a goal or two. And we're back talking around a 10, 15, 20 point defeat, so. But yeah, look, you have to have a go. My opinion is, anyway, Alan talked about Kildare not going for it after Flynn got the goal. Yeah, it just went back to Dublin holding the ball, slowing it down, and they just ran back in that defensive shape again, which it's that type of play. It's not to say it's not winning games anymore. It probably never really did. Maybe back in Donegal's times, but at this stage of where football is at, teams have worked that out. So, but yeah, you're trying to say, look, well, we can't be critical of Kildare because they stayed within 8 points, but did they really have a go? Like, I know as a player, I'd be sitting there this morning going, did we really have a go? And I have been there. I've been there over the years where we're going, fuck's sake, we just defended here the whole time, and we didn't actually go and have a crack at them. That's hard to, from a player's point of view. I think that's hard to, it's hard to stomach, and it doesn't sit well with me now. But it's easier said than done. You want to try, and you don't want to get beat by 20 points either.
That's an interesting point. When you look yourself in the mirror and go, Jesus, we didn't even ask them any questions. That's always my problem with teams against Dublin. And they scored 20 points. Dublin have shown that's dropping those bodies back. We saw Westmeath in Moore Park last year. We saw Laois. They're all trying to do it. It doesn't keep the score down that far, and you can't score. So would you not go, here, do you know what I'll do? I'll risk them scoring a goal to try and score a goal ourselves and give us something to shout. When are we going to get back around to managers saying that and going, we need 4 forwards up minimum? And can 2 midfielders and two half forwards covering around that 45-metre line, is that not enough, with everyone marking their feckin' man, to give us a chance on the other side, that you don't need those extra 2 players? Now, obviously, there's times I think Tyrone were trying to get McKenna and Bradley to, players will attack, especially depending who you're playing against, where your half forward line will be dragged out, and then there is a disconnect, then you have to run that. But surely that's the opposition messing your plan up. Why would you want that? That's a terrible thing for your team.
Yeah, no, I think that it's like, certainly if I was managing a team, that is the way you'd want to play, and that's why I said we can't be too critical of Kildare, but I think especially after the goal, and they never really, I think like any team now, you need to go after somebody's kick out at various stages in the game. Like conceding a kick out to Dublin for the whole game and allowing them have the ball is just soul destroying. It's a long way back from if you're going to concede Dublin the kick out. And any of the teams we've seen over the years that have put a good press on Dublin kick outs, they're the ones that have. Now it can be risky as well sometimes.
Well, it goes in.
Like you've seen Clucko knock one over the top and they get a goal. They get a goal off the break off. But that's the only way to play, is try and, on any team, not just Dublin, is to try and put pressure on the kick out, and then if you want to get your men back, but at least get them up for the kick outs, and try and compete on the kick out, because conceding it to Dublin and allowing them to have the ball is very difficult.
There's definitely opportunities for, I know from set plays, nearly from whenever, say, Kildare would have a free kick or whatnot. There's always opportunities there. We were saying, I know we've tried it with clubs and different sort of plans where when you're coming up against a team that's probably superior in terms of quality to us, you don't always. There's times where you want to give them the ball, and you're going, right, well, tell you what, we'll just get back into the defend here, and we'll stifle that and try and work on that side of it. But whenever, say, we have a free kick and we're fairly confident it's going over the bar, that's the time then to just go and look.
At least,
man on man or zonal or whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter, whatever system you want to play. But at that point, you can set up, while sometimes in open play, the goalkeepers move that fast now, and you've maybe made a couple of runs and the ball's just out and away before you're even turned around. So I think there's teams, when you're coming up against somebody like Dublin, there's times to press and there's times to drop off potentially. And definitely from the set plays and whatnot, the teams should be 100% pressing up on them, and whatever form that takes, then at least you're offering something different there. And then you could drop off at times if you want, but you have to mix it up at this stage.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Finish up some positives for Dublin is John Small being back. Terrible hamstring injury, played 42 minutes, went off with a blood sub. I say Desi was just delighted. Look, you've gotten through 40 minutes, you're back now. The positive effect of him being back was James McCarthy back in midfield. He broke it really well, competed really well in the air, that's a big plus. Merchant is back, which might put Brian Howard back into forwards, which might mean either Paddy Small or Cormac Costello now is an impact off the bench. Do you know what I mean? There are positives, and McDade is good enough to be on the panel the next day. He's another one. He could push Howard onto the bench, by moving players around, So, there are positives from Dublin that they are getting back. I was saying, they hate Mayo. Mayo hate them. If anything's going to spark Dublin, it's the next game.
Yeah, I wouldn't be worried about Dublin in any way. I think.
Would you not a little bit now?
I think Mayo will bring the best out of them. I think you're right, and I think they'll take it up a level, certainly from what we saw yesterday in terms of the intensity play with on the field, and I think they'll probably see it this week. They'll know. At the start of the season when they had it mapped out, they'd have known they would have been at this stage the Tuesday or the Monday after after a Leinster final. They've 2 weeks for an All-Ireland semi-final. They'll probably have a training match now next weekend, which I'm sure will be the best training match of the year considering what's ahead. So I think the next 2 weeks, kind of mentally from a Dublin perspective, will be very important. But I'm sure we'll see them lift the intensity levels of of how they play, and they know they're going to face a different challenge in Mayo. They know Mayo are going to ask a lot more questions than what they've been asked so far. And as you say, the couple of subs coming back, I think the Pascal's doing quite well yesterday. Maybe there is a little bit more competition now going in for places going into the next day than there has been over the course of the Leinster Championship.
Yeah, so that might lift it a little bit. Performance of the weekend. Daniel Flynn got man of the match. Hard really to argue with that, to be honest with you. His goal was just incredible. And that's, again, the frustrating thing. Jimmy Hyland, Daniel Flynn, top quality players, just didn't probably have the support. Daniel Flynn won a good few balls early on and was having to loop back around waiting to get a bit of support with him and stuff, and then the support dried up and he started going for maybe a shot that he shouldn't have, and he got dispossessed a couple of times because that off the shoulder pass isn't on from a target man. But I'd not call him, his goal was phenomenal. He's walking onto any team in the country as a target man number 14, right?
No doubt, absolutely no doubt. Look, he's got everything. He's obviously a very prolific. Winning that first ball. He's pacey, he's strong. It's not too often to see McCarthy getting dispossessed and not so easily, and just going in and him. He went past. I'm not sure who it was, but he obviously dispossessed McCarthy.
Johnny Cooper.
Back. He just knocked Johnny Cooper out of the way and just buried it. So. Look, he was obviously had a fantastic game, and look, he was nearly at times, you were crying out for somebody to help him, because he was looking up and he was winning ball. He was assisting things. He'd kicked a few in the middle, cross-field passes and whatnot. It was probably hard to argue that he wasn't the top performer that day, and he walks on any team.
I think that goal in itself is going to be enough for Dublin over the next kind of 2 weeks to get their mind right. Like James McCarthy, he will be furious with himself. James, he prides himself on being a tough defender, and to get turned over like that, 30 yards from his own goal. Johnny Cooper as well, very tough defender. There was just a bit of a size mismatch, I think, there, but his pride will be dented a little bit as well by how he was knocked over by Daniel Flynn coming through and stuck in the net. And the two of those boys are obviously very influential in the Dublin dressing room, so they'll use that. I think they'll use that particular moment in the game to say, right, this is where we weren't right, lads, and if we don't sort this out for the next day, if we get turned over like that by Mayo the next day, it could be it could be a different story. So I think it's a very important. It was a great goal, but I think for Dublin, it'll be a very important moment in their analysis and their talk over the next few days as well ahead of Mayo.
I thought Jimmy Hyland had a very good first half. There was a lovely moment where he scored his first point and he goes around mouting to Mick Fitzsimons. See that? Mick's just started laughing at him as if, go away, you little pup.
Mick
but like, I love that though.
He'd never really, unless he was really annoyed about something, he'd never get engaged in that sort of stuff, and he'd just smile back. That's the donkey in him.
But you wouldn't blame Jimmy either. Look, he was up for it and he wanted it, but it was almost like, now come on now, you. I have 6 All-Irelands in my sock here, or how many? 8. Simons probably has 8. Kieran Kilkenny did stand up in the second half, Colm. He quite likes getting in and around that kind of possession-based game. He's well able for it. He has more patience than I have anyways. He could do that for 5 minutes without stopping and be patient enough. He got a great brave mark, scored two good points. I thought he was probably over the whole game Dublin's best player.
Everything went through him, and anything that was good in Dublin's attacking play came through him, and he kicked. He kicked 2 points, kicked one off his both feet, maybe I think he got as well. So he definitely, he had some shaky enough moments, but it didn't faze him. The good thing that I sort of was watching him, he was making the odd mistake and he get blew up for too long and whatnot, but it didn't seem to take a flinch out of him. And that's probably when you see that, you go, look, that's somebody that's a seasoned campaigner and can just doesn't worry about mistakes, while other players sort of. They make a few mistakes and you can see the head dropping and whatnot, but anything that was good for Dublin at the weekend, it seemed to go through him, and we all know that he can dictate games and control games when he wants to and slow it up and pick up the pace when he wants to. So fairly positive day for him. Yeah,
Cormac Costello got 4 from play. I came away from the game not remembering Cormac Costello getting 4 from play at all. Did you?
Yeah, he was probably quiet enough, but I think the few chances he got, he kind of nailed them. But I think Kieran was probably a lot more influential at the crucial stages of the game. When Dublin were starting to pull away, he got a couple of scores. Like I said, he got a good mark. And look, we know what to expect from Kieran now at this stage. At times for me, he can be a little bit frustrating because he slows it down so much sometimes, and you can see opportunities where, why don't you go and take that on? But he's as Colm said, he's obviously a very experienced campaigner now, and he knows how to play this game. And for years with Dublin, I suppose we struggled to close out games. Maybe our game management was poor a number of years ago, but in fairness to him, he knows the right thing to do at the right time, and as I've said before, when he is doing that, who are any of us to second guess Kieran Kilkenny?
Yeah, exactly. Anyone else from Dublin that kind of impressed you? It's hard to forget, a bit like Tyrone. Are outstanding performances becoming rarer here or something?
Well, I think in games like that, where it's particularly the Dublin game, it was kind of quite pedestrian for long periods of the game. I kind of found myself getting a bit bored with it, and 5 minutes ago past and kind of nothing happened, a score or two. There wasn't a huge amount of standout moments in the game. Obviously the goal was a great finish, a couple of Kilkenny's points maybe, but apart from that, it was more about maybe some of Dublin's poor finishing, or maybe them being off colour a little bit. So it is difficult, but I think Kieran Kilkenny probably was the best player in view.
Yeah, okay, we'll give it to Kieran Kilkenny. Daniel Flynn, we'll give it to Daniel Flynn right. for the 1-2 and the mark. Right, we'll leave it there, lads. We'll be back. We'll do a show on Thursday, and there's no matches this weekend, but we'll talk to you on Thursday. I'm off to do a what if list, a Pat Gilroy what if list, just in life in general. I'm looking forward.
What if the car breaks down on the way up? What if I lose my laptop?
Talk to you on Thursday. Good luck.